Hi everyone, in this video we're gonna go ahead and build the sports speaker app. So let's go ahead and create a new Android Studio project. The name of the app is going to be sports speaker, and the package name, the save location path, the language is Java, and the minimum API is Android 4.1 Jelly Bean. Let's click on finish. And now let's go ahead and add the resources to our application. So we have some musics and some images. You can go ahead and download these resources from the resources section of the current lecture. First, we have the res drawable folder. So here you can see that I generated these images by using the Android Final Resizer application. So here are the images. I'm gonna just copy all of these folders, and I'm gonna go and open the Android Studio, right click on this drawable folder, and then click on Show in Explorer. And I'm gonna paste these folders here. I'm gonna close it. Now you should see inside the drawable folder we have these images. Next, we need to add the sounds. So I have created some sounds here for this application. So these are the sounds. And I'm gonna just copy all of these sounds. Or if you want to, you can also test these files. So for example, if I double click on this boxing, or let's go ahead and open it with Windows Media Player. Boxing. So you should hear the name of the sport. So in this case, it is boxing. So I'm just gonna simply copy it and then go ahead and open the Android Studio, create a new directory, right click on the res folder, new directory, and then the name is going to be raw. Next, let's just right click on this raw folder and then paste these sounds. Just click on OK. Now you should see these sounds, these MP3 files inside the raw folder. Now let's go ahead and design our application. Double click on this activity underline minute.xml. Let's drag grid layout into our constraint layout. And then let's add the constraints. So I'm gonna just select this grid layout, switch to the view less attributes. So now let's go ahead and add the constraints. So a constraint to the top, right, bottom, and left. And also let's give this grid layout an ID. So I'm gonna type in here grid layout. So now let's drag an image button. So an image button is just a button with an image. So let's search for it. Drag it into our grid layout here. So first, before adding an image button into our grid layout, let's specify the row count and the column count of the grid layout. We want to have 3 rows of 2 columns. So let's switch to the view all attributes, and then for the row count, just enter the value 3. And for the column count, enter the value 2. So each row is going to have 2 columns. So we are going to have 6 columns in general. Now let's add the image button into our grid layout. So here, let's open the project here and let's search for boxing. Select this boxing. You can also search for boxing inside this search area and click on OK. So this image button is added to our grid layout. Now let's go ahead and let's change some of the attributes of this image button. So the layout width should be 150 dp, and the layout height should be again 150 dp. Okay, now let's set the scale type of this image button to be fit center. So the image is going to be fit center inside this image button. Next, let's go ahead and let's give our row weight and a column weight to this image button, to this column. So let's go ahead and search for row weight. It's going to be 1. And also let's add a column weight to this image button, which is going to be 1. So here it is, our image button. But here notice that we only have one image button, one column inside our grid layout. This grid layout is supposed to have 3 rows, and each row is going to have 2 columns. So I'm going to select this image button here inside this componentry section, and I'm going to just hold down the control and then click on or press on the letter C key in order to copy it, and then I'm going to control V in order to paste it here. So now we have 6 columns, 3 rows and 6 columns, and that's fine. Now let's go ahead and change the image of the other image buttons. So the second one is going to have the kickboxing. So here you can see that when I clicked on these image buttons, something went wrong inside the XML file. And if I switch to the text tab, we should go ahead and see what is going on here. Let's take a look at the image buttons that we have here. Maybe accidentally, we added an attribute here. So here you can see that if I switch to the design tab and if I click on these image buttons, you can see that it is not allowing me to select these columns. It is not allowed to do that. This means that there is something wrong with our XML file. And here also you can see this icon that says show warnings and errors. If I click on it, here it says column indices start plus span mustn't exist the column count. So this is the same error that we had before. So now I just need to switch to the text tab, and here we should see the error. So here you can see that for this image button here, let's click on preview. So it's not showing us the preview because there is a bug inside our XML file. For this last image button, I accidentally added this attribute. It might be a bug in Android Studio because I didn't add this attribute here, the layout row. I'm gonna delete it. This is our second image button, the third one, the fourth one. So here for this layout column, this image button has an attribute called layout column 5. So this is not the attribute that I added to my image buttons. So I'm gonna select it and then delete it. So now you can see that in the preview, now we can see our layout. So this means that the problem is now solved. Sometimes these problems happen and you need to debug your application. So now I can select my image buttons. Again, this might be accidental or it might be the Android Studio bug, but you as the programmer or the developer is supposed to debug your application. So now let's select this second image button and search for we have src compat attribute. So just select it and then instead of boxing, let's search for kickboxing and select it. So we have the src attribute and the src compat attribute. I'll talk more about these 2 attributes later and the difference between these 2 attributes. But for now, just know that the src compat and the src attribute is used to specify an image of our image views or our image buttons. And the difference between src compat and the src attribute is not that much. But here you can use the src compat, or you can also search for the src attribute here. So for this one, let's select it and then let's choose judo. So select it. And this one is going to be karate. So I'm going to select this attribute and search for karate. And this one is going to be aikido. So I'm going to search for aikido. And the final image button is going to be taekwondo. So I'm going to search for taekwondo image inside the drawable folder. So now let's go ahead and run the app. So here it is, the look of the application. And here you can see that everything is looking fine. And we can actually click on these image buttons. So let's go back to Android Studio and let's go ahead and specify an ID for each image button. So here for this one, I can say IMG boxing, for example. So this is the formula, IMG plus the name of the image. So for example, this one is going to be IMG kickboxing, IMG judo, IMG karate, IMG aikido, and IMG taekwondo. So go ahead and specify an ID for all of these image buttons. Next, we need to specify that how we are going to play the sound when the user taps on one of these image buttons. So according to the name of the sound, so for example, inside this raw folder, we have this boxing.mp3. We are going to click on this boxing image button and we are going to specify a tag exactly the same as the name of the sound. So I'm gonna search for the tag value. So the value of the tag of this boxing image button is going to be boxing. So here it is, the name of this sound, okay, except this .mp3, just the name of the sound, and then press and enter key on your keyboard. So for this kickboxing, again, the value that you specify for the tag of this kickboxing must be the same as the name of the sound that we are going to play. So for example, this kickboxing, and then the tag is going to be the name of the sound. So here it is, the kickboxing value. So I'm gonna assign that value here. So remember what I told you about tags in Android? The tag, the data type of the tag is object. So that's why we can, for example, use integer, string, or any other numeric values. It's an object. So I'm gonna just pass the value kickboxing as the tag. So now you get the idea. Now go ahead and specify a tag for judo, karate, aikido, and taekwondo. So next, let's go ahead and open the main activity class, and let's go ahead and declare our image buttons. So I'm just gonna type in here private image button. It should be of type image button. Make sure that you do not use image view, and then just refer to the names. So IMG boxing, comma, IMG kickboxing, and so on. So here I have also initialized all of my image buttons inside the onCreate method. Make sure that you are referring to the right ID. So for example, this IMG boxing is referring to this IMG boxing ID. So you should be careful about these codes and these references. Next, we need to go ahead and create an on-click listener for each of these image buttons. So here, for example, I'm gonna say IMG boxing dot set on-click listener. So now I am going to type in here new view dot on-click listener. So here it is, one way to create an on-click listener for your UI components, but this is not a very good programming practice because we don't want our onCreate method to be crowded. So here I'm just gonna say, instead of creating an anonymous inner class that is going to implement this on-click listener interface, I'm gonna say that the main activity dot this context, the main activity class, is going to implement this interface. So it is now showing us an error, and that's because the main activity is not implementing this interface yet. So I'm gonna say implement, and then the name of the interface. So let's change the name of this parameter to image button view so that it's more meaningful. It doesn't matter whether you change this name or not, but I want this parameter name to be meaningful. So I'm gonna say image button view. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and create a switch statement. So first, let's make it a challenge. Go ahead and create a switch statement so that we can differentiate between all of these image buttons that are going to be clicked. So give this challenge a shot and good luck. So here we are going to simply switch between the IDs of this image button view that is going to be clicked or tapped. So I'm gonna type in here switch, and let's refer to this parameter name image button view dot get ID. Next, let's go ahead and create the case statements. So if the value of the ID of this image button view that is tapped is r.id.imgboxing colon break. The next case is going to be r.id.imgkickboxing colon break. So now you get the idea. Go ahead and create the other cases for the other image buttons. So now that we created these case statements, we need to somehow go ahead and play the sound when the user, for example, clicks on one of these image buttons. So when the user clicks on the IMG boxing, I want to play this boxing.mp3 sound. So this is your challenge. Go ahead and solve this problem on your own. You can search online if you want. Notice that we specified a tag value for each of these image buttons that is the same as the name of our sounds. So somehow think about solving this solution. You can go ahead and write your solution on a piece of paper if you want, write an algorithm and see how you can solve this specific problem. This is a very important step if you want to become an ultimate Android developer. And it doesn't matter at all if you don't solve this problem. I just want you to think about the solutions. That problem solving process is the most important thing in the process of becoming a professional Android developer. So in order to play the sound, I'm going to create a separate method, and then we can call that method from each of these case statements. So here inside our main activity class, I'm going to type in private, and the return type of this method is going to be void, and the name is going to be play sport name, a pair of parentheses, and then as a parameter of this method, I'm going to pass the value sport name. So when we pass the sport name to this method, then this method is going to play the specific sound that is related to that sport name. So let's go ahead and create a variable of type media player, and let's name it as media player, or let's say sport player. And then I'm going to say media player dot create. So here you can see that we have different versions of this method. So let's just call the create, and here you can see that we have, for example, a version that needs a context and an URI. We have other versions that needs a context, a URI, and a surface holder. So for our case, first we just need to pass the context. So the context, I'm going to pass only this. You can say main activity.this, and as the second argument, I'm going to say get resources dot get identifier. Okay, now we need to pass 3 arguments to this get identifier method. First, we need to pass the name of the sound that we want to play. So we already have the name of the sound as the sport name as the parameter of this method. So I'm going to pass the sport name, comma. Next, we need to specify the def type. So this is going to be the name of the folder that we put our sounds in. So in this case, it is raw. So it is of type string. I'm going to put 2 quotes, 2 double quotes actually, and then just type in here raw. Finally, as the final argument here, we need to pass the package name of the current context. So in order to get the package name, we have a specific method for that. I'm going to say get package name. That's it, semicolon. So in this way, we can access the sound that we want to play by just referring to its name. By just passing its name, we can play that sound. So here you can see the sport name inside the raw folder, and then we have the package name. So we assign this value to this sport player, which is of type media player. The next step in order to play this sound is just to say sport player dot start. So when this method is called, we need to pass the sport name to this method, and then it's going to go ahead and automatically start that sound, and it's going to play that sound. So let's go inside our onClick method. So for example, here we have the case r.id.imgboxing. I'm going to now call that method. So I'm going to say play sport name. So here I have a typo. I need to solve it here. Play sport name. So I'm going to say play sport name. And then for the name of the sport, remember what we specified as the value of the tag of our image buttons. We just need to refer to our image button, for example, imgboxing.getTag. So the tag value is going to be the sport name that we want to play. But because the tag value is going to be of type object, we need to convert it to a string value, to a string. So for these other image buttons, again, we need to first call this method and then access the tag of that specific image button. So that's it. We just called this method for each of these case statements of our image buttons. Now we just need to simply go ahead and run our application. So here it is, our application. Let's go ahead and let's click on this boxing, for example. Let me increase the volume of my computer. So hopefully you heard that. Now if I go ahead and click on kickboxing, you can see that it is not playing the sound, or if I click on judo, it does not play the sound, or even the karate, aikido, and taekwondo. It is only playing the sound of boxing here. So there is a problem. It is a bug. Now you can go ahead and you can start the debugging process to see what is wrong with your code, or you can go ahead and open the XML file and see maybe you have entered a wrong value for the tag name for these image buttons. So as I'm taking a look at these image buttons, there is nothing wrong with the tag value. So this is your challenge. Go ahead and debug this application on your own, and then continue watching this tutorial, and I'm going to show you what is wrong with our app. So now I am going to start the debugging process by creating a breakpoint, because it is the right way to debug our application. So here in this line of code, set content view, I'm going to create a breakpoint, and I'm going to click on the debug icon at the top. Let's wait a little bit here. So now the debugging process is started. Now we can control the flow of the program. Here inside this variables area, you can see these variables. For example, we have this img boxing, which is currently null. I'm going to click on step over. So here it is going to initialize our UI components. So now you can see that the img boxing variable is not null anymore. So now it's going to initialize other variables. So there is nothing wrong with our UI components. So here, let's take a look at this line of code. Here we are setting an on-click listener on our img boxing here, and we are saying that the context is going to be the main activity class. So the main activity class is going to listen to the clicks of the user on this img boxing. So here it is the error. What about the other image buttons? So in this way, we simply found the bug. Now I just need to stop the debugging process and close this area, and I just need to go ahead and say, okay, img kickboxing dot set on click listener, and here we just need to pass this, or main activity dot this. So we have img judo dot set on click listener. So here, for example, I pass main activity dot this in order to be explicit about the context. img karate. So now that we set an on-click listener for all our image buttons, let's go ahead and delete this breakpoint by just clicking on it, and we just need to go ahead and run our application. So this is how you simply debug your application, by just creating a breakpoint. Now let's go ahead and click on boxing. So it is working. Let's click on kickboxing. So again, it is working. Judo, karate, aikido, and taekwondo. So our application is working perfectly. So congratulations to you for building the sports speaker application. So I have a challenge for you. Go ahead and create the animals speaker application. So instead of sports, just put the animals here. You can use grid layout or any other layouts. And then, for example, when the user clicks on the lion image, it's going to, for example, just speak the name of the lion, or maybe a description about the lion. So after building your application, make sure to share your results with other students by just posting a discussion in the course, and then you can post a screenshot of your application, or maybe if you want, you can also share your codes with other students. So this is the end of the current section. In this section, you have learned about animations, you have learned to create a lion or tiger application, and you have practiced on all of the concepts that you have learned so far. And also you have learned about grid layout, a very important layout to use in Android. And you have created also audio and media player apps. And also as the final application of the current section, you have created the sports speaker application. This is the end of this current section. In the next section, we are going to go ahead and create an Instagram clone. And by the way, because the course is in the process of being updated, please be patient. I am going to add some clone apps to the course, such as one of them is the Instagram clone, Uber clone, Snapchat clone, WhatsApp clone, and other applications. So I will send an announcement for each clone app that I add to the course. I will also add tutorials about JSON parsing in Android. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.